The Alps, a surging arc of rock and ice sweeping across the breadth of Europe. Ethereal, majestic, a world of sublime landscapes and formidable beauty. And yet there is an entire other dimension to these legendary mountains. Amidst this spectacle of nature's grandeur are marvels of human ingenuity, culture, and courage. It is this rich and varied tapestry of man and mountain which distinguishes the Alpine Adventure. Over millions of years, the monumental forces of nature churned the earth and thrust it skyward. Ripped by mile-thick glaciers, eroded by torrents, scoured by winds, a craggy domain of immense rock amphitheaters emerged. True to their mythical status, the Alps contain a profusion of peaks whose perfect grace and lofty heights overwhelm the senses. But these rugged mountains have done more than stir the human heart. Throughout history, the Alps have served as a natural barrier, separating tribes and empires, kingdoms and countries, isolating the people of one valley from the next, creating the boundaries and cradles in which Europe's diverse cultures, languages, and traditions have evolved. Here on the rooftop of Europe are relics of ancient empires, spiritual sanctuaries, musical meccas, fairy tale kingdoms, and a fascinating variety of people for whom the Alps are home. The Alps form a roughly 600-mile-long and 200-mile-wide arc of massive glaciated ranges that surge through Italy, Switzerland, southern Germany, and Austria. The French Alps form the western flank of this mighty range. This is home to Western Europe's highest mountains. France is also where the Alps meet the sea. The Alps emerge from the Mediterranean unassumingly as the gently folding foothills of the Riviera seaboard. From this sun-bathed beginning, the mountains make a precipitous northward journey, climbing upward through a spectrum of alpine habitats. Above treeline is an expansive domain of meadows known as Alps, for which the mountains are named. With only a short growing season, the plants and grasses surface as soon as the snows of winter melt. By June, these alpine meadows are transformed into a magical dreamscape as more than 700 varieties of flowering plants burst into bloom. While topographical extremes characterize the entire French Alps, it is in the Dauphiné region that the mountains attain their most dramatic and memorable profile. Until the 6th century BC, these mountains were isolated by a barrier of ice. As the ice melted, people entered the region. Gauls from the north, Roman conquerors from the south. From this melding of races, the modern inhabitants of the Dauphiné were born. Grenoble is the capital of the mountainous Dauphiné. While it is a modern metropolis, the city's character derives from its long and tumultuous past. By the 11th century, Grenoble was a feudal burgh, ruled by an alliance of religious orders and aristocrats. A flourishing period of religious architecture ensued. Among the masterpieces is the 13th century church of Saint-André, which shelters the remains of the Dauphins, who once ruled this fief. Through the ages, Grenoble has championed its tradition of fine architecture. But while the town has upheld one tradition, it helped to bring down another. In 1788, the first rumblings of the French Revolution were felt in nearby Vizille. The revolt spread quickly to Paris. Driven to desperation by famine, the citizenry stormed the Bastille and brought down the French monarchy. Having helped topple the old regime, the town found a new leader in the figure of Napoleon Bonaparte. Upon his return from exile in Elba in 1815, the citizens of Grenoble rushed out to welcome the conqueror with cries of "Vive l'Empereur!" Napoleon wrote in his memoirs, "Until I came to Grenoble, I was an adventurer. In Grenoble, I became a prince." While kings and emperors have vied for control of the region, it is the mountains which dominate the landscape and remain the enduring symbol of the Dauphiné. From the center of Grenoble's old town, a very modern téléphérique transports visitors to a more recent relic of Grenoble's past, the 19th century Bastille. Perched precariously on a slender crest of rock east of Grenoble is Briançon. Situated at more than 4,300 feet, this is one of Europe's highest towns. Strategically located on the French frontier, Briançon served as an outpost and was fortified in the 16th century. The fortress served its purpose admirably in 1815, when the French garrison stationed here withstood an assault by Austrian forces 20 times their number. Briançon is strategically located for another purpose. For nature lovers, it is the gateway to the imposing mountains of Écrin National Park. Created in 1973, Écrin is the largest of France's 6 national parks, with mountain peaks stretching to more than 10,000 feet above the valley floor. The park is home to an astonishing variety of flora. More than 2,000 species of plants compete for the admiration of hikers. Réponse de l'air, Rosier des Alpes, and Campanule each make a brilliant showing, but invariably it is the entire pageant which takes the prize. Rising above a constellation of peaks is the centerpiece of the park, the Écrin Massif. From this central point, deep valleys fan out beneath a relentlessly vertical succession of walls, creating a monumental gallery of glacial architecture. In contrast to the rugged mountains, the wildlife of Écrin Park is fragile and its protection essential. Marcel Besset is instrumental in carrying out this effort.
The animals found here in the park are typical of those found throughout the Alpine chain. The most common of these animals are the chamois and the marmotte. The idea of preserving nature from human expansion is very new in France. National parks are an Anglo-Saxon concept. Both the British and the Americans have parks that date from very far back. Le Parc des Écrins, on the other hand, is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year.
The upper reaches of Écrin are also home to the mountain hare. This Arctic animal migrated to Europe during the Ice Age. After the great glacial melt, the snow-white hare perished in the green lowlands of Europe. However, it still thrives in the upper reaches of the Alps, where it has been stranded for 250,000 years. The agile chamois divides its time between steep mountain ridges and the grassy woodlands, where it retreats during the thaw to avoid avalanches. These timid animals have disproportionately long hind legs, which enable them to race uphill with surprising speed. In full flight, a startled chamois can climb 3,000 feet up rugged slopes in just minutes. Great mountains exert a power over people. Like giant stone temples, they are a source of wonder and awe. This power has drawn people to the Alps throughout history. Here, amidst the majesty of nature, people have come in search of spiritual enlightenment. At the Grande Chartreuse Monastery, this search continues today. The monastery preserves an ancient way of spiritual life. It has been home to the Carthusian order of monks since 1084, when Saint Bruno led a small band of men into the alpine chain of La Chartreuse. The monks adopted the ascetic principles of the Benedictine order, but to poverty, obedience, and chastity, the mystical Carthusians added silence. The monks of Grande Chartreuse continue to lead lives of solitude, like Saint Bruno and his followers had 9 centuries before. To support the monastery, they produce a green potion known locally as the elixir of life, the famous Chartreuse liqueur. Made from a 16th century recipe, the liqueur combines distillations from 130 plants with alcohol made from wine and honey. To the north of the Dauphiné lies the Savoie, home to the tallest mountains in Western Europe. The region is named after the powerful House of Savoie, which forged an independent state amidst this strategic mountain fortress. Enriched by their control of trade routes between France and Italy, the dynasty built a lavish chateau in Chambéry, capital of the Savoie. Within these fortified walls, the Counts of Savoie ruled their fiefdom, conducted court, and plotted conquests. At the dynasty's zenith in 1408, the church of Sainte-Chapelle was erected beside the palace as both a monument to God and a symbol of the divine authority by which the House of Savoie ruled. Built in the French Gothic style, This church has held many famous weddings, including those of King Louis XI and Charlotte of Savoy. Weakened by conflict, Savoy became part of France in 1860. Being from the country's youngest region, the Savoyards retain a unique cultural identity rooted in these mountains and their former Savoy dynasty. Throughout the Savoy summer, vineyards create a striped blanket of shimmering green. Introduced by the Romans, the art of winemaking has become a profoundly French tradition. The Savoy's best-known appellations include Roussette, Crépy, and Seyssel. Part science, part art, winemaking from cultivation through bottling is often a family enterprise. For the family of Annie Elion, winemaking is not work, but rather a way of life.
To be a winemaker is to look at nature every day, to see what she'll give us. It is to work with her so she'll provide the best quality. It's living according to the rhythm of the seasons. It is a passion that's transferred from generation to generation. It's a love for the vines that my husband has known since the time of his grandfather. In fact, all the children were immersed in this ambience. It's a passion that one lives, and that we will convey to our children.
Wine and cheese together form the basis of a dish that is synonymous with the Alps, and a favorite at the home of Yvonne Baucher.
The fondue is a traditional dish not just of Savoie, but of all the Alps. It's a dish that is made with the melted cheese and wine of the region you are in. So here, where we live, we use Beaufort cheese mixed with either Emmental or Comté. When the wine starts to boil, I add the cheese bit by bit and stir until it melts. According to tradition, if someone drops their piece of bread into the fondue dish, that person must buy a bottle of wine for the other guests.